This is the Page Publishing Book Club. How you doing? I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. Our first author joins us from Tunisia through Skype and then a phone line to talk to us about what he describes as an anti-imperialistic critique of U.S. policy in Iraq entitled For the Sins of Her Prophets.
I'm Elizabeth Chasbro, and per the book, I am a young newspaper reporter in New Mexico. Obviously, with my voice, I am not Elizabeth Chasbro. I am another author writing under a pseudonym to protect the mistaken identities of people who commit corrupt acts in the book. The name Chasbro comes from Stevie Chasbro. That was a pseudonym I used in literary magazines as a young man. And Chasbro is basically Charlie Brown, Chaz Brown, Chasbro. Currently, I'm in North Africa. I am teaching and writing. It's a life story. The idea of the book is to analyze the situation I was in 2004. I make it fiction, so I have some flexibility, to analyze on three levels. Policies and institutions. It's basically an anti-colonialist book. Secondly, I'm really focusing in on the individuals, however. How do individuals deal with morally ambiguous situations like that which was occurring in Iraq under the civilian occupation? Because the failure in Iraq in 2004 was less a military failure than a civilian failure. And I was on the civilian side. And the third level of the book is to see how does an individual who's very, very flawed, like the protagonist, Stevie Chasbro, the father of Betsy Chasbro, how does a flawed, anti-heroic protagonist deal with morally ambiguous situations when he himself has his flaws? And I will state up front that I supported the invasion of Iraq, and I often say I supported the invasion without feeling deceived, and I may burn in hell for supporting it. His whole world is falling apart. His career has failed, and he's taken a job through his wife, who's well-connected, who knows one of the ambassadors in the U.S. Embassy at the time. He gets a job inside the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad, and while the occupation is falling apart. He's been fired. He's about to leave Iraq. He's been fired for insubordination. He's about to leave Iraq, and the ambassador pulls him back into an investigation of a kidnapping, a hostage situation involving another American diplomat. The idea for this small task force is to find ways to get through to the people who kidnapped this man to try to negotiate his release. Unfortunately, he is murdered. They're called on to investigate the murder. They cannot solve it. The reader will never really know who did it. And that is very typical of Iraq. Bad things would happen, but no one really knew whose fault it was. I'm very focused on the anti-hero here. If you, the interviewer, were in Iraq in 2004, you would know exactly who the good people are. Some of them I use their actual names, but most I don't, and you would know them right away. The bad people, if you know them, I have failed, because I'm not focusing on the people, I'm focusing on the behaviors, and focusing on the types of incompetence, fraud, waste, and abuse that was going on. A lot of it was unintentional. It is also to emphasize the civilian part of the failure of 2004. A number of books have been written, factual history books, very good ones that I mentioned in the afterword. Basically, what Iraq boils down to was a failure before the invasion actually started. It was a failure inside the Bush White House, probably to attack in the first place. But once the decision to attack was taken, 4 people inside the government basically ring-fenced President Bush and prevented him from getting better counsel. And he went to war with far too few resources, destined for failure. And as I said, the whole point of the book is, like the protagonist, I would say about myself, I supported the war. Even to this day, I do not feel deceived by what the premises of that war, but I do feel like I may burn in hell for it because of the disaster brought upon the Iraqi people.
Well, for sure, some food for thought there. Thank you, Ned. Up next, a ghost tale, but nothing for Freddy Krueger to worry about.
All right. Well, hi, I'm Lisa Shannon. I live in Warrenton, Virginia. Right now, I'm a dental assistant, and I've been doing that for almost 20 years. But I've always just had dreams. I've just always wanted to do something a little different. And about 25 years ago, I decided to write a book. And I don't know why, I just all of a sudden decided. I mean, I'd written things before, but not a book or anything like that. And I just sat down and started doing it, and it took me like 5 years because I would do it in my spare time, and I was a stay-at-home mom and all. But um, I just that's why I did it, and so then I kind of tucked it away, and then I ended up going through some turbulence in life, like a lot of us do, getting a divorce and all of that. And but it was always in the back of my mind. So about 2 or 3 years ago, I decided to pull it out and go over it again and just try again. That's what I did. And I'm kind of glad I did because it really just makes you feel good just to do something you always wanted to do, you know? So it's called Ghost Tale. It's about this family who lives in suburbia. And one parent, the father, he hates it. He hates the close living and all of the chaos that sometimes goes with that. The mom, she loves it. And they have two children who are 7 and 9. And they have an incident happen at their home. And he has decided that they want to move. His parents, who are now deceased, were going to buy a place at one time down along the northern neck of Virginia, but they were suddenly killed in an accident, so that didn't transpire. Well, actually, the house was sold before they were killed. But anyway, almost a year goes by, and the realtor gets in touch with him and kind of puts a bug in his ear about it, and he just wanted to go look at it. He didn't want to buy it. He just wanted to see what his parents saw in it because he'd never seen it. So he and his wife do that, and then they have some things happen at home that weren't so good in the neighborhood, and they decide to give it a try. And so they get out there to this place, and basically it's haunted, but they don't know it. But it's not one of these nasty Freddy Krueger cut-em-up things. No offense to Freddy Krueger, because that was a good story. You know, I try to give all artists their due. But at any rate, so they get out there and they realize something isn't right. And through much research and sort of coincidence, they start finding out what the history of the house that they're living in. And they just kind of get through it and go through some really weird things, and they make some great friends. And long and short of it is I'm a real spiritual person, so I like to, you know, I put in basically good and evil, where good always wins. But it's a good story, and I enjoyed writing it, and a lot of the characters are kind of, though it's fiction, they're kind of based on people that lived around me at the time, and I would just kind of write it in as I was writing the story. You know, sometimes I felt like it kind of wrote itself, really. It's kind of strange, but some of the simplest things, like there's one in the beginning where I'm just kind of introducing the characters, and there's one where the son, Brett, is, you know, trying to get this great big roll of toilet paper. How ironic that is these days, isn't it? Trying to get it out from under the cart. And that happened when I'd taken my kids to the grocery store, and, you know, I remember watching my son trying to help me out, and he's like 7, and he's trying to tug this thing out from under the grocery cart. And then when I got home to write that night, it just, I don't know, I just stuck it in there, you know, sort of, because we all, just those little things in life just kind of like, oh yeah, you know.
I know, you never know when those little things might wind up in a book. All right, Lisa, thanks. Our next author has rediscovered writing with her youngest daughter and shares her experience in the adventures of Mr. and Mrs. Mouse.
Hi, my name is Sarah Souzer. I am a postmaster in Woodville, Ohio. I actually started writing when I was young. I used to write a lot of poetry, and I wrote, I probably had a compilation of over 500 poems. And then just after I got out of the military, I had a bad fire and I lost everything. So I was so upset and just completely depressed over the whole situation, I just stopped writing. And then I was married previously, and I raised children from that marriage, and then I had 2 children, and then we were divorced, and now I'm remarried. And then, of course, my husband has 3 of his own children, and we have 1 child together. So there's a lot of children in our family. So the difference in age is 24 years. between my oldest stepdaughter and then my husband's and my daughter. She's 7 years old and my oldest stepdaughter is 30. And so I think she was more of an inspiration as far as how to do it right the second go around. So I just felt like I needed to explore writing again with her. So the books that I write are children's books, and they're all about my daughter and her adventures with her little stuffed mice. She has these 2 stuffed mice that are her best friends. And still to this day, after 7 years, she still carries them around everywhere she goes except for school. Other than that, they're with her. So all these books that I've written, I have 3 of them. Only one's been published, but the other 2 are coming out in a few months. And they're all about, her little adventures with her mice. The first adventure is the trip to the zoo. And we went to the zoo and so many cool things happened that day. It was just really unique, the day that we had. She actually got to feed a giraffe, and I have that on video. And then when we went to the ape exhibit and the gorillas and the apes and all that, there was this big gorilla sitting against the glass. And when she went up to the glass and she put her hand on the glass, he put his hand on the glass. And so I had a picture of that too. It's just so cool. So all these little things that happened all through that day, I thought how cool it would be just to write a book about it. And I decided, my husband kept pressuring me and pushing me to just do something with it. So I finally did. I have social media, probably like everybody else does, but I use Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. Those are my 3 major ones that I use all the time to promote the book. In fact, I just posted another thing today on Facebook, but I also have a YouTube channel that I created on my own, and it's called Storytime with Sarah. And I try to do it a couple times a week where I read the book or I read different stories and try to keep these children engaged in reading since they're not in school right now. And, they've kind of lost touch with what they're supposed to be doing every day because it's not the norm. So I just felt like maybe giving them a nice time to just relax with their mom or their dad, or just have a time where they can get together and everybody sits down and they get to read a book together, and I show the pictures and I read it. And so that's what I'm trying to do right now with the whole coronavirus and everything that's happened this pandemic.
That is a great idea, using YouTube for story time. Why wait for the library to reopen? Nice job, Sarah. We head to the Bahamas now, where we find the author of a book about a warrior princess named Kanaya, who shows us anything is possible.
My name is Shantanique Rowe. I'm from Nassau, Bahamas, and I'm an aspiring actress, and I'm also a part-time cashier. I started writing in 2007. I was 19 years old. When I was a little girl, I enjoyed watching and reading fantasy fiction novels. I found it very interesting. And one day I said to myself that I'm going to write my own book. And it came to pass, and I'm very happy. This is my first officially published work, Kanaya. And it's about a warrior princess. And she became the first woman to lead armies men into war, which she succeeded. The main characters are King Amal, which is her father, and her mother, Queen Kitizia. And you got Cyrus, he is the messenger, and he's also an eagle. And Queen Athena, she is the evil queen who sets out to destroy Tikal and rule it with her evil powers. And Miguel, he is Queen Athena's general who was sent to kill her, but he ends up falling in love with her. The message is, to anyone out there, you can be anything you want to be in life, no matter who you are or where you're from. Once you put your hard work into it and dedication, sacrifice, and stay focused, you could be anything you want to be. Through social media, Instagram and Facebook, and I'm saying it word by mouth by letting my friends and family know that Kanaya is out and it's available, Right now, I cannot do book signings or go out there now due to the pandemic, the coronavirus. I cannot move now, but that's the most I could do through social media.
All right, Shantanique, I hear you. I don't know where any of our authors would be right now without social media. Thank you so much. And Mr. Music says it's time for us to take a quick break, but we're coming right back. You should too. This is the Page Publishing Book Club.
Attention all authors. Page Publishing is looking for authors. Have you written a book and want to get it published? Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, Apple iTunes, and other outlets. They handle all aspects of the publishing process for you: printing, cover art, publicity, copyright, and editing. Call 800-204-6099 now for your free author submission kit. That's 800-204-6099 for your free author submission kit.
We're back on the Page Publishing Book Club. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. The horrific murder of a Filipino woman in Japan in the 90s didn't stop one performer from traveling there, but then he wound up in the company of the woman's murderer. This is the true story of Oyaban, chief of the Japanese mafia.
I'm an attorney, Mr. Lee, the attorney representative of the author, a man who I met here in the USA on business, whose pen name is Sid Damon, the main character in the new book, Oyabun, subtitled Chief of the Japanese Mafia, Yakuza, and based on a true story, personal experiences of a Filipino musician in Japan in the early 1990s. It's a true story. It's about faith, hope, courage, and the determination to survive of a talented Filipino keyboard musician and pop nightclub singer in Japan, facing the stresses and fears and difficulties of performing in nightclubs with life-threatening Yakuza as customers day to day, like America's mafia, but skilled with martial arts and samurai swords, rather terrifying people. And in particular, it's about Yamashita Oyabun, chief of the Yamashita group of the Yakuza in the Chiba prefecture east of Tokyo. It's a drama based on the stresses, fears, and difficulties he and his singing duo teammate, a singer named Maria, faced in the early 1980s. They went there about the same time a big story broke in the Filipino newspapers about a lady named Myra Chris Sioson, who was a prominent Filipino entertainer who was murdered by a Yakuza by plunging a sword into her body. And it was all over the news in Manila, where Sid is from. There was lots of money flowed in Japan, and it was a very entertaining world. But without intending it, they got involved with Filipinas who had relations with the Yakuza, the mafia, and his life changed. He listened to stories from another Yakuza about that fellow's boss and brothers, and every story just left him with fear and the urge to get away. But he couldn't forget Maria, but she had gotten involved with the boss. So Sid says he won't be able to live with himself if he leaves without taking Maria, but that task wasn't easy, and he closes by saying the question in this book is, how can a musician who hasn't learned any martial arts and instead spends all of his time playing the keyboard outsmart an evil man? And you need to read the book to see how the story closes out.
I feel that this guy is almost fearing for his life.
Well, that's why this is written under a pen name.
So how do you promote a book like this?
Who knows? Maybe a movie will get made out of this at some point. You could bring in many ties relating potentially to either good guys, police enforcement, or bad guys, whether they are Yakuza in Japan or American mafia.
Short of shopping this as a screenplay, how are people going to find out about it outside of this interview?
Sid wrote it because he simply felt a need to tell this story. And anyone who looked on Google and saw the story about this lady who was murdered back in the early 90s will understand what the situation was in Japan at that time.
All right, Mr. Lee, thank you very much. Imagine being drawn into a battle of good and evil on your computer through evangelism. Our next author did and came up with A Battle at the Fingertips, the IamFish.net Archives, Book 1.
So, hello, my name is James Byerly. I'm an author of Christian fiction. This is my first novel that I've written. It's a techno thriller, and the title is A Battle at the Fingertips, the IamFish.net Archives, Book 1. And basically, my book is divided up into archives rather than chapters. After the story had taken place, somebody wrote them down and recorded them into archives in a story format. The IamFish.net Archives, the IM stands for Internet Ministries. fish.net. And basically, I'd like to start off with a verse if I could. It's Matthew 4:18-20. This is what inspired me to write the novel. And it says, "And Jesus, walking by the Sea of Galilee, saw two brothers, Simon and Peter, and Andrew his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. Then he said to them, 'Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men.' They immediately left their nets and followed him." So a bit about me, I'm an online teacher for 12 years. So I'm frequently online, daily online working, grading and teaching students in business and technology in high school. And it's all about evangelizing online and what might happen when that occurs. I believe every time that evangelism happens, that there is a spiritual battle that rages, and that is the case online. I wrote this book, amazingly enough, 25 years ago, and I began by reading Howard Ringgold's The Virtual Community book. And after reading that book, I began being interested in what it's like to use the net to evangelize, and started reading up on internet addiction. And I came up with a really neat plot and just had a ton of fun writing it. It took me about a year to do. So the prospect of evangelizing is highly relevant during this time of the coronavirus. And as the years progressed, the story got more and more and more relevant. And the creative inquisition that I came up with is how evil might be working and orchestrating strategies online. And that was just something that really, really interested me. Basically, what you'll see is good and evil clashing online. You have these imperfect evangelists, and you have anarchists, a group of anarchists that are gathering together online in these communities. And they start to interact. And this battle that kind of spurs forth spills out from the internet into the real world, too. You have evil that is attracted to certain personalities. And I think that works really well with those that are isolated online, that are kind of in front of the computer and they don't get out much. I often wonder kind of how evil works with those kind of people, how they might be manipulating and trying to, gather those people together so that they can do their evil deeds. So as the evangelists start evangelizing online, they kind of bump into each other a little bit. And that provides just a fascinating, interesting story, I think. I just started marketing online, really. And in 2 months, I gained 2,000 followers, and there's a lot of interest being generated. I also created a blog to post kind of what's happening with the novel on there. And I'm currently working on a sequel.
Very good, James. Nice work getting the word out there. Thank you. Our next book, Warring Kings of Old, takes us from the first century to the present through miracles and magic. We follow the prince of the Militites tribe and discover what they learned, what they gained, and what they were willing to sacrifice for survival.
My name is Robert Sherman. I live in Linwood, California. I enjoy writing, and it's something that I started doing at a very late age, but it's something that I really enjoy doing. I was in a situation where I was homeless and I was really down and out. And I had an older guy come to me and talk to me and tell me, all the things that you're complaining about, you need to stop complaining about those things, Robert, because you have done some things in your life that were good. And now you're going through a stage where now it's learning time for you to learn more. I was Mr. Los Angeles back in 1983. Even when I got a little older, I did a show. I think I was 59. I did a master show, and I won that also. It was 2009 when I did that show. I enjoy competing. I enjoy being a so-called warrior without a sword in my hand. Competition, to me, is like being a warrior, and you have to always be on your game. You have to be always one step ahead of your competition. Oh, my book is about being a warrior, and it goes way back in the days of when men were almost coming out of the caves almost. And there were still people that were still trying to, come together and organize as one, as a tribe of people that were now becoming a nation. So every time they tried to become a nation or get stronger, someone would come along and would take everything from them. So there was a kid that was smart enough, knowing that each and every time that they would try to do something, someone would come along and try to take it from them. So he had to sit down and talk to the elders and everybody that was there about what we need to do to have this stop. And I suggest that we become warriors, not gatherers of seeds. We need to be a nation, but we need to also be an army. We need to come together and start training for that. So the kid, he had lost his mother and father from a lot of attacks that was going on. So he stood up and said, I'm tired of running. He was then, at that time, 17. And they fought other tribes. He did an outstanding job to the point where everybody in the tribe was saying, we need a leader. So the book is about overcoming adversity, good and evil, striving to be the best that you can be, no matter what your adversities may be.
That's right, Robert. We should always strive to be the best that we can be, no matter what. Easier said than done. And another episode of the Page Publishing Book Club is in the can. I was tempted to start calling these shows the Corona Edition, but I think every single author mentions something about how this pandemic is affecting them, particularly in trying to bring attention to their book. I got to tell you, some authors have really come up with some great ideas, like the one we heard from who is reading her children's book on YouTube. Others are tweeting out little tidbits of their books every day or every week. There's all kinds of ways to use social media. And if you don't know how, stop thinking you're too old or not smart enough. Just cut that out right now. I know you know somebody who can help you. Find them. Let them help you. I mean, what else are you doing, In the meantime, if you missed anything, go to 710WOR.com and download the podcast. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. I'll catch you next time.